Hello, this is Kim Williams. This is Intercultural Communication with Professor Ames. This is Discussion 3, Group J, on Chapter 9. Before I get started, I wanted to just say, in the spirit of learning how all of the various cultures sort of organize their presentations or lack thereof, really, in the spirit of this chapter, I thought I would just wing it, I guess, as best as I can, because I did have to make a few notes in order to not heighten my anxiety, because the thought of having various cultures present information, such as the Japanese, with no outline, I found to be, I just could not even grasp that concept, really. It was really, really disconcerting to me, and so I thought, well, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to see if this is even possible for me. So bear with me. Please keep in mind that this is really in the spirit of the chapter. I'll be answering 3 questions. And the first one, does your culture value a particular style of persuasion? Do your own preferred ways of persuading others reflect your cultural style of persuasion? I believe that my cultural values the quasi-logical style. I'm a Westerner, so in business in particular, it is important to use objective statistics and evidence in the logical form. I personally like presenting material in a linear way. For me, this is logical. In fact, as I shared before, it is completely, absolutely gives me anxiety to think of presenting something without, first of all, being linear in just the way you present information. And secondly, to not have any type of outline is just completely foreign to me. And so I really like presenting things in this, I guess, quasi-logical style. It gives me a sense of satisfaction. And because of time restraints in our fast-paced environment of business, the direct approach saves time really, and really minimizes confusion. In reading this chapter, I often wondered how many instances my style of communication has come across actually too direct or maybe even arrogant. In upper management, in my sort of area of business, there isn't really time to sort of beat around the bush. Time is really premium, and you just really have to say what you mean in a direct way, because there really isn't time for structure or lack of this direct approach. However, sometimes I have a very difficult time in taking business and then, being in regular life. Sometimes I can come across very hurried or incredibly direct. And in reading this, I thought just being a Westerner or an American in general puts us already maybe in a light that we are too direct and come off rude. And if that's sort of amplified when I, enter a regular just conversation, or if I need something sort of quickly, I take that from business, and it doesn't really translate well in life sometimes. And I completely can really own that and make a mental note that sometimes I do that. My preferred way of communicating is really influenced by my Hispanic grandparents who raised me. They were more sort of presentational. My grandmother was incredibly passionate. Uh, they were There were no instances of uncertainty in her acceptance or displeasure of a certain circumstance. She could cut right to the heart and would appeal to your feelings. Really, she appealed to my feelings all the time. And really, I spent most of my life not wanting to disappoint her. And I find myself appealing to one's values or to gain commitment based on, what people find valuable. It helps me. I think that she taught me this, and what was valuable, and she knew what was valuable, is my love for her and my lack of wanting to disappoint her in any way. And so whether it was consciously or not, she really could, go straight for that. And for me, I have found that though my style really in presentational is sort of where my influence comes from, I have learned how to be quasi-logical, I guess, if that makes sense, but truly I am presentational. I used to, before I changed careers, used to spend a whole lot more time really trying to find what was the most valuable. And still in business, I can key in on that pretty quickly. So I think that I've learned that I need to be quasi-logical, but truly presentational was my influence. In the supplement, I found the story of the Chinese non-usage of the words yes and no to be really puzzling until reading the passage in its entirety. The Chinese say yes and no in their own way, and it's not straightforward, but it is yes and no nonetheless. They really did sort of, I don't want to say manipulate, because I don't think that it's really supposed to be manipulate, but really in the end, by what they didn't say or their lack of enthusiasm, really did manipulate the situation, and they got what they wanted in the end. So I found that to be really interesting, and really they do say yes and no. We just have to look at the meaning of it. It doesn't come right out and say that. Our second question is, what does silence communicate to me, and how is your culture's use of silence connected to Hall's cultural patterns of low and high context? Well, personally, I talk a lot, and I probably talked more than I do now, only because I feel like I'm engrossed in a lot of thought and preoccupied a lot of times. But silence among close people to me is perfectly fine and normal. It's kind of where, even if I come home and I've had a long day, my husband and I are perfectly comfortable, just catching up a little bit and then just being quiet and sort of letting our day, getting into the house and letting our day kind of sort of a respite to our day, I guess I'm trying to say. But for me, silence is very, very awkward, especially if I'm just being introduced to someone. There's a lot of guessing, I guess you could say. If someone who I'm newly acquainted with, there were long pauses and silence, I tend to fill those silences with words and questions and try to breeze over the awkwardness, I guess, and try to make that person feel more comfortable. In reading this chapter, I could very much be really making that person uncomfortable and truly making myself seem to be less intelligent than I am. I wasn't aware of that. I hope that isn't the case a good deal of the time, but I found that to be quite interesting in reading this. I believe that I found Edward Hall to be pretty accurate in his research. As an American, I tend to be low context, though Latinos tend to be high context people. Though because I was raised in the United States, it doesn't override my tendency to be low context, I guess. I hope that adequately answers number 2. Number 3, members of some cultures will inevitably say yes, even though given the situation to their true feelings, the answer is most likely no. Why do you think they do this, and what purpose might it serve given that we've learned what we've learned about different cultural assumptions and value frameworks? This was interesting. I believe that many cultures tend to be more arrogant than others, I guess. The cultural connection explains that Native Americans would never directly tell anyone that what they should. I think it was the Native Americans, I'm pretty sure, that they would never tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do. And for instance, they have, Americans have very little reservation about saying what you should or shouldn't do. Our entire culture is around what you should or shouldn't do, and we really don't cover that up. It's just, if we see something that is wrong, we just got through with the political campaign, and everything is, especially in the end, comes down to he shouldn't have done that, they shouldn't have said this, this party is bad because of this way. Americans really don't have a filter on saying, oh, that's not right. And we really do that even from very little in preschool and growing up in elementary school. Oh, that person shouldn't do that, or that person is wrong, or, whatever. And we just grow up sort of, knowing what's right and wrong in our own eyes. And we have very little filter on saying, don't do that, and, you should do this. So culturally, that's very interesting that there would be cultures that really wouldn't do and say those kinds of things. In the illustration, also going back to the Chinese who wouldn't say yes or no, that they didn't want Japanese food, they directed their wants or needs in what they didn't say pretty loud and clear. I thought, going back to that supplement that we read. The purpose may be more in the necessity to find meaning for oneself, I guess. Why would a culture do this? And really, in examining this, I found I believe that other cultures put an emphasis on really the learning part, being incredibly present in the circumstance. And instead of me just telling you what you should or shouldn't do, and even taking out arrogance, because what I say really shouldn't be imposed on you and what you or should or shouldn't do. I think really some other cultures, it's about the purpose of life, and it's the meaning and the lesson and the learning. And so if I come right out and impose what I think you should do, instead of letting you find that on your own in your own journey, really takes away from the lesson, I guess, or the self-discovery. And I thought about this, and actually I felt saddened that in our culture, the lessons and the opportunities to explore others is actually stripped from our everyday lives. I found that having the time to unravel meaning without many words or through high context methods or codes would mean that we are actually in the moment, I guess. I mean, if that makes sense, I'm just sort of rambling here, but not rushing from one answered question to the next, I guess. Learning other cultural values and assumptions is really eye-opening to me, and I found this to be incredibly helpful in just life and my interactions with people. That I think it boils down to perhaps taking the time to learn as we're going through this journey, instead of just reaching the destination. And I think that perhaps many cultures get that, and we've sort of lost that. And I don't say altogether, because I do think that we raise our children up. I've raised 2 children, and we teach them right and wrong, and we take the time to really explore ourselves, and are we going on the right path, and that takes time. But I think as a whole, we're so quick to get to the destination that we don't take the time and are not completely present in the journey. So that pretty much sums that up. I'm looking forward to our discussion on Friday. Thank you.